I loathed the routine gatherings at the county club. Every few weeks, it felt like there was yet another flimsy excuse to throw an extravagant party where the wealthy could parade their egos. My wife, Karen, couldn't wait for these events. Over the past year, her drinking had spiraled out of control, causing her to embarrass both herself and me frequently. Karen and I have been married for 24 years and have 3 children currently in college. We met during my MBA studies and hit it off immediately. However, our relationship started to fizzle out about a decade ago. I thought it was just a natural progression, though I yearned for more affection and closeness. I didn't push the issue and accepted that our future might lack romance. Despite this, I had a fulfilling job that brought in enough money to comfortably support our family, even with the financial burden of college tuition. Karen didn't work. She preferred to immerse herself in community service and social activities. Her lavish lifestyle was funded by my income, which required financial stability. Karen maintained her looks well, probably due to her frequent visits to the spa and salon. On the other hand, I saw myself as average, with a slight paunch and graying hair. I did dress well thanks to my job requirements and Karen's shopping habits. Although I excelled at my job, I felt a deep sense of discontent. I yearned for a change, something more fulfilling that wasn't just about the paycheck. I also craved a new environment. Our house was too big for just the 2 of us, and I hated the time and money spent on its upkeep. However, Karen dismissed any talk of such changes. She loved her grand home, the country club scene, and her wealthy friends. At one of these social gatherings, I found myself drifting through the club, making small talk that felt meaningless. As the evening dragged on, I noticed Karen's drinking was getting out of hand again. Her indulgence was obvious, especially as she chatted with some local women. I wandered over and overheard their conversation steering towards intimate topics. Just as I was about to leave, I heard Karen's voice rise above the chatter. "Honestly, if it weren't for Brian Hughes, I wouldn't have known what good lovemaking was in my life," she blurted out, oblivious to my presence. The sudden silence told me they had noticed me. Karen, clearly tipsy, turned to me, startled. "Michael, I didn't know you were here. You weren't supposed to hear that." "I'm sorry," she slurred, followed by a few girlish giggles. The other women looked uncomfortable. Some left quietly while others stood in awkward silence. Karen gave me a mischievous smile. I set my drink down and left the club calmly. Instead of going home, I headed to the airport and caught a flight to Reno. Reno seemed much more appealing than Las Vegas, offering me a chance to reflect on my relationship with Karen. During my time there, I gained new perspectives that I had been missing. A weekend away promised further clarity. I turned off my phone and secured a room at a casino, depositing $20,000 to get a complimentary stay. Casino accounts are interesting because they aren't subjected to federal regulations. Deposits remain unreported, though large winnings must be. I admired this system, even though I wasn't much of a gambler. Waking up at noon on Saturday, I pondered my situation over a burger and fries. Reno appealed to me with its pleasant climate and lively scene. As I walked along the Truckee River, I reflected on failed marriages. I wasn't considering a divorce in Reno yet, but the idea of throwing my wedding ring into the river someday crossed my mind. On my way back to the hotel, I spotted a real estate office with photos in the window. The idea of owning a condo in Reno suddenly made sense. After spending some time in the office and driving around, I found a small furnished unit that I liked. Buying it while married was tricky, but I set up a lease-to-buy agreement with a significant deposit, an idea I proposed and the seller accepted. Managing our family finances early in our marriage was one of my best decisions. Karen was not financially savvy and left bill payments to me while enjoying spending. That evening, I treated myself to sushi and then retired for the night, adding another $10,000 from my Visa to the casino account despite the hefty cash advance fee. The next morning, I enjoyed a hearty breakfast at the casino restaurant. As I sipped my second cup of coffee, I noticed my waitress had a black eye. Despite her efforts to hide it, it was obvious. She was a pleasant woman in her mid-40s, but her eagerness felt a bit forced, suggesting she was new to the job. Her determination, despite her lack of finesse, impressed me. "Your name tag says Anna. Is that your real name?" I asked. "No, it's Abby, but Anna was the closest tag they had," she replied. Well, Abby, I'll take another coffee and promise a generous tip if you share the story behind the black eye. Why don't I pour you a refill, and you can leave a smaller tip while I ignore your question, she countered. Fair enough. It was rude of me to pry, I admitted. With the condo key in hand, I decided to gather some essentials to start setting up my new place. My first stop was the Silver Spur used car lot, where I bought an old Focus sedan. It had seen better days, but it would do for local errands, even though I wouldn't trust it for long trips. Renting was an option, but knowing I'd be back frequently, I decided to buy. With a few $100s, I picked up the essentials for comfortable living, including some clothes. I spent the rest of the day opening accounts at several casinos, writing checks to each one. The funds disappeared into my accounts without a trace, and by day's end, I had deposited $660,000 across 4 different casinos. I meticulously noted these transactions in a small pocket-sized notebook, detailing amounts, dates, and casino names, serving as a log of my gambling losses over the weekend, even though I hadn't placed a single bet. Given my reputation as a lousy poker player, any losses in roulette, craps, or blackjack would be believable. With 6 months to gather the down payment for the condo, I anticipated no issues. By dinner time, hunger hit me hard as I realized I'd skipped lunch. I returned to the casino restaurant where I had breakfast and was greeted by Abby, my waitress, again. "You're still here? Seems like a long day," I remarked. "Yeah, double shifts to make ends meet. Rent's higher than I expected here. Care for a drink?" she replied. Not wanting to pry, I placed my order and kept the conversation light. When she brought the check, she paused. "Sorry for my attitude this morning. I'm struggling to adjust and feeling self-conscious about my eye. It's a parting gift from my husband when I mentioned divorce. Hopefully, it's the last. Thanks for the generous tip at breakfast. It really helps," she explained, her smile tinged with sadness. Her words stuck with me through the night. That evening, I realized there wasn't much more I could do immediately. I needed to return home to handle a few matters before moving forward. Securing a flight back was easy, but I was uncertain about my plans once I arrived. The next morning, Abby was serving at the diner, and I managed to get one of her tables. After finishing my meal, I approached her. "I have a small problem and was wondering if you could help. I need to leave today and won't be back for a week or so. I need someone to house sit my condo. It's a 2-bedroom place, so there won't be any conflicts. Could you help me out for a couple of months?" "Are you serious?" she asked, surprised. "Absolutely, no strings attached. I just hate leaving the place empty. Most of the time, it'll be just you. When I'm there, I'll stay out of your way, I promise," I reassured her. Though honestly, I didn't mind if someone cleaned the place out. I couldn't let Abby know that. "Is it close enough to walk from here?" she inquired. "It's nearby, but I'm leaving you my car too. It always has gas for when I return. I'll call you in advance. There's an answering machine," I explained. Abby seemed hesitant, perhaps thinking it was too good to be true, but I was pressed for time. "Here are the condo key and the car key. The car is a dark blue Ford Focus, parked out front. Here's the condo address. If you're not comfortable, don't worry. I'll get the keys when I return next Friday," I said, scribbling the address on a napkin and handing it to her. She accepted the napkin and keys, still unsure. "Abby, really, don't stress. If you decide against it, that's fine too," I reassured her. An hour later, I boarded my flight home. Although I would have preferred to stay in Reno, I drove by the house after picking up my car from the long-term lot. Seeing Karen's car gone, I quickly packed a few essentials for the week: clothes, shoes, my laptop, in under 10 minutes. I also grabbed my passport and birth certificate. My company had a few kitchenette-style units available, and my position allowed me to use one as needed. I booked it for the next 2 weeks, started charging my laptop, and then called my eldest son, David. I explained that his mother and I were having some issues and that I'd be occupied for a while. I asked him to inform his sisters at Auburn University and assure them not to worry. Despite all 3 being enrolled there, I still had to pay out-of-state tuition, but thankfully I could manage it. After hanging up, I plugged in my phone to charge and took a shower. The only food I had on the plane was a bag of peanuts, so I looked forward to a proper meal. Monday was chaotic. First, I visited the bank and secured a substantial second mortgage on the house, surpassing its current value. By the end of the month, things would change. From the bank, I contacted Auburn University to arrange prepaid tuition for my kids, wiring $240,000 to the school. This left me with a cashier's check for just over $200,000 to take to Reno. I cashed in 2 CDs, paid the penalties, and closed my money market account. I decided to leave my credit cards alone until month's end. Running late for work, I was greeted by my loyal secretary with black coffee and a knowing smile. "Good morning, Mr. Terrell. Going to tell me what happened at the county club on Friday? Or should I just believe the rumors?" she teased. "Margaret, the rumors are all true." "Anything else you need to know?" I replied. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, ready to assist. "Find everything you can on Brian Hughes. I think he used to work here. Also, ensure my scheduled work is handled by the staff and keep all my appointments or meetings unchanged. Any questions?" Margaret left with a broad smile and a thumbs up, ready to get to work. I had expected it would take weeks to sort everything out, but now it seemed I could wrap it up in a week. I called my lawyer and scheduled an urgent appointment. Before leaving, I told Margaret I wouldn't accept or return any calls from my wife and instructed security not to let her into the building. Daniel Collins, a college buddy of mine, never liked Karen, making him the perfect choice to handle my divorce. When I walked into his office, he said, "I was at the country club on Friday, Michael. I think I get why you're here." "You're right, Daniel. I thought I could endure it as long as I wasn't publicly humiliated, but Friday changed that," I confessed. Daniel, with his no-nonsense demeanor, responded, "I need access to all your accounts and a couple of powers of attorney. My assistant will prepare everything and give you a call. Is there anything specific I should be aware of?" "Well, Daniel, Friday's events triggered something in me. I've developed a gambling problem. I spent the weekend in Reno and lost a significant amount of money. I'm heading back next weekend, and I fear it will be even worse," I admitted, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "Gee, that's rough, buddy. Are you keeping records of all these losses?" Daniel asked, a grin creeping onto his face. "Yes, I am. I can send you copies of everything," I agreed. "Absolutely. You know, Mike, we should probably not discuss this further," Daniel suggested. "You're right. Do you need anything else?" I inquired. "I'm good, Mike. Go handle your business," Daniel advised, handing me a financial worksheet to complete before our next meeting to sign the forms. It was then I realized I had skipped lunch. Back at the office, Margaret had prepared a detailed report on Brian Hughes. She recommended I speak with Martha Gable in personnel before proceeding. Martha, with her commanding presence and tightly pulled back hair, could be intimidating. If Margaret thought it necessary, it must be important. "Good afternoon, Mr. Terrell. Please have a seat," Martha greeted me, trying to put me at ease. Despite my status, I felt like a schoolboy in trouble. She closed her office door and said, "Margaret briefed me. I don't engage in office gossip. I deal strictly in facts. 3 years ago, Brian Hughes confided in me. I swore to keep his disclosures confidential, but I can no longer honor that pledge. If anything I say offends you, feel free to leave. If you disagree, direct your frustration elsewhere. Do you understand, Mr. Terrell?" "Yes, I understand. I can handle whatever you disclose without throwing a tantrum," I replied, attempting a light-hearted remark that earned a slight frown. "About 3.5 years ago, your wife Karen approached Brian Hughes at a company event. There was heavy drinking, and before the night ended, Brian and Karen engaged in an affair in one of the private offices. Brian was set to marry the following month. Karen threatened to expose their affair unless he continued seeing her. He hoped she would stop once he was married, but she persisted, coercing him into continued encounters. In desperation, Brian sought my help. I couldn't disclose this ethically, so I transferred Brian to another office in Dallas. Karen stopped her advances once he moved. Brian never told his wife about this, she explained. It seems Brian was as much a victim as anyone. Initially, I wanted revenge, but that now seems imprudent. "Any suggestions, Miss Gable?" I asked. "Given your influence, I suggest letting the matter rest. Brian is a valuable employee and an asset to the company. Don't jeopardize his career over something your wife initiated," she recommended. "Thank you for your time. I agree. Being coerced into intimacy with my wife is punishment enough," I said, rising to leave. Martha smiled and added, "By the way, it's not Miss. I've been married for 32 years. It was hard to imagine Martha in a romantic setting, but perhaps she had a softer side when she let her guard down. Margaret had rearranged my schedule, leaving me with a clean slate. Despite my wife's persistent calls, I remained focused. I had an appointment with the company president the next day and one with the legal department that afternoon. I invited Margaret to dinner, but she declined, joking that her husband wouldn't approve. She suggested I ask Martha instead. The meeting in legal took longer than expected, resulting in retaining a few individuals. I extended apologies, which were met with understanding. Redeeming my retirement plan for a cash settlement proved challenging. Closing the shared savings account went smoothly but required time. Handling my sick leave, vacation time, and company insurance was relatively straightforward compared to other tasks. It was becoming evident that I would be leaving the company soon. I hoped the news wouldn't reach my wife prematurely. I dined alone that evening, strangely finding my thoughts drifting to Abby. I wondered if she had moved into the condo and if she was still working double shifts. Despite our limited acquaintance, I felt a keen desire to return to Reno and see her. Recognizing the foolishness of these thoughts, I tried to dismiss them. It was imprudent to waste time on fantasies. The next morning, I cashed in 2 whole life insurance policies and terminated 2 term policies. I was surprised by the substantial cash value the whole life policies had accrued. I arranged to collect the checks. The next day, I took care of some loose ends. While my car was covered by company insurance, I canceled the insurance on Karen's Lexus since the lease was in her name, but the insurance was under mine. Before heading to work, I stopped by Daniel's office, handed in the financial form, and signed several papers his secretary had prepared. Upon returning to the office, Margaret had my coffee ready. "I don't mean to add insult to injury, boss, but you should speak with Stephen Hayes down in settlements before meeting with Charles," she advised. Charles Parker, the company president, likely already knew why I was there. The settlements division was in the basement, a stark contrast to other departments enjoying natural light and windows, making it feel like a dungeon. "Stephen, Margaret mentioned you wanted to see me," I greeted Stephen Hayes, a reserved and efficient worker, who led me to a secluded area. "I've heard about tensions in your office. I don't engage in gossip, but I felt you should know something. About 6 years ago, we had a colleague named Stephen Hale. He got involved with your wife after an office event. She kept contacting him at home and work. He regretted it and tried to end it, but she threatened to expose him to his wife. When he called her bluff, his wife found out and threw him out. He spiraled into drinking and lost his job. I don't know where he is now, but rumor has it that Karen paid Stephen's wife $10,000 to keep quiet," Stephen revealed. "Thanks, Cal. You made the right call telling me," I acknowledged. I rode the elevator to the 9th floor for my appointment with Mr. Parker. Despite being early, he ushered me in promptly. The meeting was brief. The legal, personnel, and payroll departments would handle everything, and I was instructed to contact Mr. Parker personally once everything was sorted out. He handed me a card with his private number. There were no assurances or regrets, just straightforward business. Margaret greeted me with a smile upon my return. "Book me a flight to Reno for Thursday morning with a 2-hour layover in Dallas," I instructed her. She pointed out the window, where Karen was having a heated argument with the security guard in the parking lot. "She's been down there for over 20 minutes. They won't let her in, and she refuses to leave. What do you want to do, boss?" "It seems the guards have it handled. My only concern now is finding someone to have dinner with. I dislike dining alone," I remarked. I called Daniel to check on things. He informed me he couldn't take action until I resolved the financial mess. With incoming checks and cash in the bank, I assured him I was financially stable. I planned to head to Reno early and stay until I was broke. Periodically, someone would pop into my office to tell me my wife was trying to reach me. She even had friends call their husbands at work to locate me. I stayed at the office a few more hours, tidying up for my replacement. Karen sat on my car's hood as I left the building. Margaret handed me the keys to her Honda Civic, smiling. "It's a good excuse for my husband to pick me up and treat me to dinner. By the way, you're not planning anything reckless in Dallas, are you?" "Nope, just wrapping up loose ends. No revenge, I assure you," I replied. I drove to Allentown and had dinner at the Outback. I was back in my apartment before midnight. The next morning flew by as I signed more paperwork for Daniel, closed all bank accounts, and canceled all credit cards. I even arranged to shut off utilities at the house the next week. I collected checks from the bank, insurance company, and workplace, surprised at how much I was worth. I got a new cell phone and canceled the old ones. I sold my country club membership for $23,000 to an old friend. My replacement was already in position at work, a nice guy from Boston. Margaret, more knowledgeable about office operations than I was, didn't need to train him. There were a few items at the house I wished I had, but they weren't significant enough to return for. Margaret told me to keep her car and her husband would pick it up at the airport. I bought a couple of cheap suitcases to pack my belongings from the apartment. Anything I forgot, I could buy in Reno. Suddenly, I realized I had completed everything I needed to do. All my assets were now in cash. There were no stocks, no accounts, nothing else of value except the house, which I was leaving to Karen. AirBlue accommodated me by moving up my flight, as they had available seats. I called Daniel at home. "Hey buddy, just wanted to let you know I'm leaving tonight. Do you have everything you need?" "I'm all set, Mike. I can serve the papers tomorrow. But I still need that financial info ASAP. You might as well give them to her. I'll start sending proof of financial irresponsibility soon. Be cautious, Mike. I don't want either of us in trouble. Karen will probably get a fancy lawyer, maybe from Philly. He might bail if things go south," Daniel warned. "It's up to you, Daniel. Do your best for me, but keep the bill reasonable. I'll be strapped for cash soon. Don't forget to look into Stephen Hale. He might need help, and I might be the one to provide it." "Got it, Mike B. Safe travels and keep in touch." I called the condo and left a message about my arrival. Later that night, I reassured Abby that I'd call her and not to be alarmed if someone came to the door. I wasn't even sure she'd be there, but I hoped so. It was strange how little I knew her, yet I hoped for some sort of connection. For now, friendship would suffice, and I was careful not to exploit her vulnerability. I arrived in Dallas early enough to enjoy a leisurely breakfast. I was waiting in Brian Hughes' office when he showed up, visibly displeased. "Mr. Anderson, I'd say it's nice to see you, but that'd be a lie. We both know it," Brian greeted me. "Relax, Brian. I'm not here to reprimand you. I just wanted to clear the air and let you know there are no hard feelings about what happened," I explained. "You could have done that over the phone," he replied, confused. "I know, but I was passing through and felt it was worth my time to do this in person. Look, you're not solely to blame. I was naive too. My wife caused most of the trouble, and I don't want you carrying more guilt than necessary," I said, trying to ease his mind. "That's very kind of you to say. I don't know how to respond," Brian said, genuinely surprised. I handed him one of Daniel's cards. "Call my lawyer later today. He might need your help, but it'll be confidential. He might ask for a notarized statement about the affair, but it won't get back to your wife." We shook hands as I stood up. Despite everything, Brian Hughes didn't deserve his life to be ruined over a mistake. An hour later, I was on my flight back to Reno, pondering where I went wrong. I had worked tirelessly to provide for my family, yet I had neglected my wife. In situations like this, we often search for our own faults. Usually I find myself to blame and can accept that. But Karen's infidelity was a betrayal I couldn't justify or excuse. Had she been discreet, I might have shouldered the blame and let it go, but her blatant disregard absolved me of guilt. The evening concluded on a positive note. Upon landing at Reno Tahoe International, I was pleasantly surprised to find Abby waiting at baggage claim. She wore jeans and a light blue Oxford shirt, a departure from her usual uniform. I hadn't intended for her to pick me up when I called. I just wanted her to know I'd arrived. "Good evening, Abby. I didn't expect to see you," I greeted her. "I thought since I had your car, it was the least I could do." "Aren't you on duty?" she replied. "No, I managed to cut back thanks to your kind offer," she said. "Oh, I wasn't being kind. I was just trying to find a way for us to be alone," I joked. "And what do you plan to do when you have me alone?" she teased. "I'm not sure yet. I haven't thought that far ahead." "Any suggestions?" I asked, retrieving my luggage from the carousel. Abby blushed slightly, indicating she was comfortable enough to joke, which was a positive sign. 30 minutes later, we returned to a freshly decorated apartment. It had small touches that significantly enhanced the overall ambiance without breaking the bank. In gratitude for her efforts, I treated us to 2 prime rib dinners. Abby seemed to enjoy the wine more than the beef. "How's the divorce proceeding?" she asked. "Pretty poorly. I still have 3 weeks left before I can even file. You need 6 weeks to establish residency. Despite what everyone said, I thought this would be straightforward. I probably would have been better off handling it from home," I admitted. "Why didn't you?" Abby paused, fiddling with her food before looking up. "Getting away from Nick was more crucial than getting the divorce. The divorce is just a piece of paper that won't shield me from further abuse. I think I used the divorce as an excuse to justify coming out here. The location wasn't important. What mattered was that I left, she explained. Her explanation resonated with me. Initially, divorcing Karen seemed significant, but now I wasn't so sure. All I truly wanted was to prevent her from benefiting from the marriage. Unless I had intentions of remarriage, which I didn't, it didn't matter. The remainder of the evening was spent discussing mundane topics like hobbies, movies, and books. Abby didn't have children, and I didn't inquire further. We slept in separate bedrooms that night. Abby had already left for work by the time I woke up. Fresh coffee awaited me, and that was all I needed. I still felt full from last night's indulgence. After a quick shower, I got down to business. "Daniel, how's my favorite attorney holding up?" I asked over the phone. There was a sigh from the other end of the line. "Not worth a dime, Michael. I've got some bad news for you. Can you promise not to shoot the messenger?" "Oh, geez, I've only been away for 1 day. What happened?" Karen's caused quite a stir. She found out about the bank accounts and other things. After contacting the police, she managed to secure a restraining order against just about everything. All your accounts are frozen, even though they're empty. You're forbidden from coming near her or the house, taking anything from the house, or contacting your children, even though they're legally adults. Most of it seems like nonsense, but sorting it all out will take a lot of time and money if you want to fix it. She even contacted the SEC about your 401k and retirement accounts. Somehow she's got the IRS looking into things too, Daniel detailed. "Daniel, I don't know how to say this, but I want no part of any of it. I'm done. Do you understand?" "I hear you loud and clear, buddy. Just so you know, she's also hired a private investigator to track you down." "I wonder how she plans to pay for all this." "Don't know and don't care. Remember, if the cops or feds ask me where you are, I'll have to tell them. I won't risk my career for you, even though we're friends." "I get it, Daniel. Protect yourself. I'll make some adjustments on my end. I won't be calling you again for a while. Thanks for sticking around, buddy. This really messes things up. You can have the best plan, but it can crumble in an instant. I had to jump to plan B, even though I didn't have one. My bright idea of pretending to lose all my money at the casinos got shut down fast. I decided not to call anyone else for help. Luckily, Abby left me the car, which was a huge relief. I have no clue how she got to work. I was left with a small duffel bag crammed with cash and checks. I had to hit up 6 different casinos to cash all my checks and swap them for chips or credit. I didn't dare go to the banks, worried there might be a hold or trace on anything. The casinos were more than happy to help out. By the end of the morning, I had everything deposited in various places and a bag stuffed with cash and chips. After a quick bite, I started the withdrawals. Within 2 hours, all the chips were turned into cash, and all the money was taken out from the casino accounts. I now had a hefty amount of money without any problems or raised eyebrows. I drove to Carson City in under an hour. There I rented a large safety deposit box at a discreet little bank and stashed everything except $55,000, which I kept for expenses. With everything secured, I was looking forward to another leisurely dinner with Abby to celebrate. But something felt off. As soon as I walked into the condo, I saw Abby scrambling to fix things that shouldn't have been touched. She glanced up at me, trying to hide her face. "I'm sorry, Michael. It's my fault. I don't know how he found me. I didn't realize he was following me until I got to the apartment. I should have been more careful. I'm truly sorry." Gently, I moved her hand away from her face. Abby had a fresh black eye, a swollen lip, and a big bluish bruise on her right cheek. "Was it Nick?" I asked. She nodded. "He had his 2 brothers with him. They're out looking for you now. Nick told me not to leave the condo." "Where are they looking?" I asked. "I gave them the names of 3 casinos. They have no idea what you look like. They're not thinking straight," she said. We couldn't stay there, and the police were not an option. We left everything and headed west, spending the night at a small off-road motel in Grass Valley. Even though there was only 1 bed, I acted like a gentleman. I got takeout for us and bought some makeup for Abby. She did her best to cover the bruises, but they were still visible. She kept apologizing all night. I felt a bit relieved when she finally fell asleep. The next day, we drove to Sacramento to get clothes and personal items. I didn't know when we could go back to the condo. I booked the Grass Valley Motel for 2 more nights. Over the next few days, Abby and I got to know each other. There was no intimacy or suggestive talk. After just 3 days, I felt more comfortable with her than I did with my wife of 24 years. When I wasn't talking to Abby, I worried about the unfolding events. I was hesitant to bring Abby back, fearing Nick might find her. I was also scared to go back myself, worried that someone might be looking for me. Foolishly, I had left my laptop, passport, and other personal documents at the condo. It was stupid, but I felt the need to retrieve them. Even though I hadn't known Abby for long, I felt I could trust her. We were both in the same boat regarding our spouses. "Have you ever been to Mexico?" I asked. "No, I haven't. Are we thinking about going to Mexico, Michael?" she replied. "I'm not sure, but if things go south, I need you to do something for me. I don't want you to get into trouble, and I want to keep you safe from Nick." "Michael, you don't owe me anything. You've done more than enough. I'll be okay." "Well, I'm not sure about my own situation. I've hidden away a significant amount of money. It's clean money, but I'm hiding it from my wife. If something happens to me, I need you to get the cash." "Who's after you? You haven't said anything about that. Did you do something illegal?" "There are multiple federal agencies and a private detective looking for me. The local police might get involved if necessary. All I'm trying to do is protect some money for my wife." "What should I do with this money?" "I've been thinking about that. Head to Guadalajara and wait for me there. Use whatever funds you need until I get there." "How will you find me?" "Go to the Libertad market for coffee every morning. I'll find you. It's big, but I'll find you." "When should I go?" "When you realize I'm in trouble." "Why not go now?" "Be patient. I'll bring you along. I'd rather we go together. It feels safer that way." "Why can't we leave now?" The conversation started to loop, so I ignored her. I didn't mean to be rude, just eager to get moving. 2 hours later, we crossed the pass and reached Carson City. I added Abby's name to the safety deposit box access and gave her a key. When we got back to the condo, I parked half a block away. The complex had a lower-level parking area beneath the units, open but covered. I told Abby to wait in the car until I made sure it was safe. "What kind of trouble?" she asked. "I don't know. With everything that's happened, anything's possible," I said. And then it happened as I wandered through the parking lot. "Michael Anderson, turn around." He was a thin, wiry man. The long leather coat he wore looked more ridiculous than threatening. He didn't have the attitude to pull it off, but the large black gun in his hand made up for it. "Do we know each other?" I asked. A broad grin spread across his face. "I'm Milo. Your wife sent me." "Okay. What do you need from me?" I asked. "I need your wedding ring and your wallet." "The ring I get, but why the wallet?" I asked. "I have to make it look like a robbery." "Make what look like a robbery?" "Your wife hired me to kill you, Mr. Anderson. I hope she paid you up front because she's broke," I said. "What do you mean?" he asked. That's when our conversation ended. From a distance, 3 burly Italians in long leather coats appeared. "Mike B. Anderson, we need to talk," one of them said, his voice loud. Their sudden arrival caught Milo off guard, and they noticed the gun in his hand. The 3 men reached for their concealed weapons just as I dove over the concrete barrier, heading for the edge of the parking lot. Milo momentarily forgot about me as I sprinted along the building toward the car. Gunfire erupted, echoing off the garage walls. Glancing up, I saw Abby dashing down the street, while 2 men in suits emerged from a black SUV nearby. Clearly, they were federal agents, likely staking out the area for me. The chaos gave me the perfect opportunity to escape, but Abby and the car were nowhere in sight. Going back to that condo was no longer an option. I didn't care who got shot in the parking garage. I just wanted to get away. I knew for certain that 3 different factions were hunting me for various reasons. It was obvious I needed to lay low for a while. With over $4,000 on hand, taking a bus to Carson City to retrieve my money wasn't an option. I was too much of a target. Hot doesn't even begin to describe it. I was just trying to escape a wife who had betrayed me. What had gone so wrong? Why was my wife trying to have me killed? Maybe she didn't realize there was no longer any insurance payout. I had overestimated her intelligence. My mistake. So, I caught a bus to San Francisco. A grand doesn't stretch far in the city by the bay. The first 1,000 secured me a new social security number and an ID, allowing me to look for work. I found a modest room with shared facilities and got a job as a waiter in a low-profile eatery. After about a month, I was making enough to get by and becoming quite skilled at waiting tables. Some customers even requested my section. I hadn't kept up with my cell phone payments, and the service had been cut off since I left Reno. I hadn't used it anyway. It only cost a few bucks to set up a new prepaid service with 50 minutes of airtime. I wanted to contact Abby, but I had no idea where she was, so I called Daniel. "Hey, Daniel, it's Michael. Just checking in." "Mike B, good to hear from you. Things are still chaotic, but not as bad as you might think. Where are you?" "None of your business. Last time we talked, I was surrounded by people wanting something from me. Am I still a target?" Most of that mess cleared up after Karen got arrested. The IRS is still after the 401k assets, but otherwise, things are better. "What do you mean, Karen was arrested?" "I thought you'd know. Ever heard of a guy named Frank Milo?" "Yeah, I met him briefly 3 months ago. He tried to kill me, but some other guys interrupted and I slipped out. How does he fit in?" "Karen hired Milo to kill you. He got badly injured in Reno and spilled everything to the cops. He said Karen was stiffing him on a $10,000 contract, so he squealed. The cops believed him and charged her. She's in jail awaiting trial because she can't make bail. Daniel, I'd consider helping her if she hadn't tried to have me killed. Her parents should bail her out, not me." "Let me see what I can do, Mike B. No one's really interested in you right now. Want me to restart the divorce? We have solid grounds now." "Go ahead. Divorce would clean things up, but I don't care much anymore. I've kept all the paperwork. I can still use most of it. Oh, your kids came home when Karen got in trouble. They were worried at first but lost interest once they knew the truth. They want you to contact them and let them know you're okay." "I'll reach out to them soon. How did your money laundering plan go?" "It fell apart. I lost control and touch. I'll check on it next week. Sometimes even the best laid plans fall flat." "Okay, stay in touch. One more thing. Did Karen ever say why she wanted me dead?" "No idea. I thought it was for the insurance, not knowing you'd canceled it. I contacted the kids and they were relieved to know their tuition was prepaid. They were curious about what happened with Karen, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. Some things will have to wait." I borrowed a car and drove to Carson City. The safety deposit box was empty. She could have left a note. I couldn't complain since I gave her access. Did she go to Guadalajara or find a hideout? Only one way to find out. In San Francisco, several small travel agencies offered group tours for like-minded people, which didn't suit me. Finally, I found a tour to my favorite Mexican city with a last-minute cancellation. Scraping together enough money for the trip was tough. The trip wasn't pricey, but I didn't have much cash. I felt comfortable since a few guys from the restaurant were also on the trip. Most signed up for side trips, but I had other plans. The first 2 days were disappointing. The Libertad market was larger than I thought. In hindsight, it was a bad choice. I hated thinking that Abby had taken the money and gone somewhere exotic, Bangkok or Tahiti. There was enough money in that safety deposit box to live almost anywhere. I was torn between waiting for her and searching for her. I ended up doing both. By the third day, it was getting dull. "About time, Michael. Where have you been?" I turned and saw Abby, hands on hips, wearing a wide-brimmed straw hat with a red band. I didn't say anything. I walked over and kissed her for the first time. I should have done it earlier. Glad I did now. That's a lame excuse. Try again. The second kiss came with a big hug, lifting her off the ground. "Abby, I missed you so much. You'll have to tell me where you've been. Later, let's go home and have some lunch." We strolled through the market hand in hand. I felt happy and content for the first time in a while. "Michael, don't be mad, but I used some of your money. Most is in the bank, but I needed a place to live. So I bought us a house. I hoped you wouldn't mind. With all that money, it's a beautiful hacienda in a beautiful city. And I'm with a wonderful woman. Love it when a plan comes together." Karen's parents got her bail money and covered her legal fees. Daniel easily got her to sign the divorce papers. She got a 5 to 8 year sentence for trying to have me killed. The reason Brian Hughes gave a deposition to Daniel is still a mystery, but Daniel didn't need it. Daniel found Stephen Hale, who was sober but struggling. He wanted a hot dog cart, so I got him one for $2,400. I settled with the IRS for $4,000. Milo is in jail in Nevada, along with Abby's husband and brothers. Their sentences are uncertain. With no legal troubles, I was free to return to my old job, now with a promotion. Once Abby's Mexican divorce is final, we'll get married. The kids will attend the wedding during spring break. While the house in Guadalajara is stunning, we won't live there permanently. Abby wants it as a vacation home. Margaret looks forward to my return to work in my new role, which is a promotion for both of us. Abby is flexible about our future location as long as we're together. She's eager for me to introduce her to Karen, which should be interesting. Though my plans didn't go as expected, I can't complain.